Okay, it's Julian Friedman here at the... Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julian Friedman from Blake Friedman. More or less 20 years ago, I was at a gathering which was the very beginning of the media program, and there was a big debate then about whether the money should go to distribution or to development, and sadly, in my view, distribution won. I say sadly because throwing money at distributing badly written and badly made films doesn't generally get them to work better. And I'm surprised we're looking at the new economies of content and no one is talking about what is the content. The amount of money we spend on developing scripts for the film and the television industry is relatively small compared to that spent in America and Hollywood. Not that I'm saying, therefore, their films are necessarily better, but they travel better. And the very fact that they have stars is because they travel better. We don't have stars in the same way. It just seems to me that a gathering like this is spending an awful lot of time looking at distribution and not nearly enough time looking at what it is that is being distributed.
David, do you want to have a respond to that?
Yeah, I mean you're right. If we all made really terrific films, then all our problems would go away. I mean, the audience would turn out. I went to the premiere last night of Kick-Ass, which probably most of the people in the room will have at least heard of somewhat, and it's quite inspiring in some sense. Not the movie, but the reaction from the audience, and it was. A reaction that I've probably only seen on 3 or 4 films ever, where it was like being at a football match. I mean, people were, and it was probably a slightly loaded audience, but really so enthusiastic and so passionate about the movie that you just thought, well, we need to make better movies a lot of the time. And you're right, we should all be discussing it, but there never is a simple, straightforward answer to it. And obviously people are always searching for it, and we at Working Title and every other studio are always searching at it. And unfortunately what you said at the beginning, which is, you have successful films and you have films that fail, but the pursuit of great content should be first and foremost in everybody's mind. I think Americans do have an advantage, and British, we also have somewhat of an advantage in that we're just English speaking, and it means that those films do travel, and the fact that the studios are American studios, it means that they've hammered away at building those stars. As if you're in France and Germany and Spain and Italy, there's a sum of money that's spent punching each one of those films out into the marketplace. I think there are other stars that you could bring to the table around the world, and obviously some of them through us have broken through. The Hugh Grants and the Rowan Atkinsons have gone out there and hit somewhat of an audience. So I guess I'm saying yes, we should be spending more money on development as well. I don't think the Americans have got an inherent advantage, but where there's money and there's thought and there's creative focus, that gives you an opportunity to be better. I don't think it's obviously not the American element that's making it successful. It's just the fact that a lot of talent congregates there.
I disagree. I think that if you look at the music industry and the movie industry, when you start out with having a market that's like a third of the world market, if you can hit it, if you can amortize or come close to amortizing on that market in either making a movie or an album or a TV show, that's going to mean that you have a lot more flexibility than many other companies in how you monetize abroad. You can subsidize, you can build long-term relationships, you can dump, you can do all kinds of things. And I think it's very interesting that if you look at the repertoire that is sold worldwide, the U.S. accounting for roughly a third of the world market, both in music and film, actually accounts for 60% plus of all legitimate sales of product worldwide. So there's a consistent pattern there, which is about scale,
right,
not about identity.
I think David's also being unduly modest, because Working Title does spend a huge amount in development variously, probably more, the majority of what's spent in the UK, I suspect, is spent by your company.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, our business has been, for many of our films, 75% of the business has come from international, and we've been less successful in America, and often our films will peak at $40 or $50 million in America and do $125 million around the rest of the world. So we come from a slightly different perspective.
Okay, question here from Ben.
Ben Keane. Just a quick comment on the long tail, which is obviously become quite fashionable and easy to rubbish. But actually, there's a couple of film companies that have done really extremely well by exploiting the long tail, and their business model completely depends upon it. The one here, this side of the Atlantic, is Love Film. The one the other side is Netflix. Completely dependent upon making the long tail work as a business model, and it works very effectively for them.
Can I just say something? Because you're absolutely right, because we have a pretty profitable business in the shape of TCM, which shows long-tail films, or films that represent long tail. I think the issue is if we expect the long tail to happen by accident, it's never going to happen. But that success can be manufactured by packaging intelligently this content in an attractive way to the consumer. And to the gentleman from Olswang earlier on about the question of Apple, keep that sort of content non-exclusive, but our experience of dealing with Apple is exactly the same as our experience in the DVD business. You package content in the right way, you make it the right price, you put it on the right shelf, it will sell. And again, it's just making this content and presenting it in an attractive way, and that's where long-tail sales come from, and we've experienced that in the movie industry and most certainly the animation industry.
I just want to respond to that. I mean, I wasn't saying that there are no long-tail exploitation strategies that work, although I would point out that Love Film is not a significant moneymaker, and the business that it kind of replaced, video rental, is a fraction of its former size. But it's actually that the idea that this would, in fact, very substantially increase the value of the content industry and of assets in catalog, right, has actually not proved to be the case. I'm just thinking across book and music industries as well as movie industry, and indeed the TV program industry as well. So, I mean, a very good little factoid which comes from courtesy of Adam's old stomping ground, the MCPSPRS, which was that on iTunes, of the 13 million tracks, 10 million have never had a sale at all. So, they were not, unprofessionally produced pieces of music. They're not user-generated rubbish. They're actually. I mean, I think that it's actually what worries me about Love Film, in particular, is why it is that a business that really, which I use a lot, actually has got 70,000 wonderful titles, but why it isn't bigger as a business than, I think it's less than 100 million turnover. So it's actually interesting, to your point about Love Film. I mean, Netflix is a slightly different thing, and also very lucrative. But I'm very intrigued that these actually models are not as big as they should be, in my opinion. I mean, obviously with the exception of
Can
Netflix.
I just throw in something as well? I'm one step removed, but in terms of Love Film, they buy at a very reasonable price, and they give it out to an enormous amount of people. So if you're a filmmaker or a studio, in actual fact, the major beneficiary, if we're worried about giving more to the distribution side of it, they do very, very, very well out of it. I mean, you can sell them something and they can rent it out 40 times, and they're buying it at a very small price. So it's not that fantastic from our perspective.